Hello, my name is Justin Stairs. This is the Brussels Signal Studio, and we're very happy to have Alexandr Vondra. Thank you again for coming this afternoon, Mr. Vondra.
Thanks for the invitation.
You are a Czech MEP, and you have a long, illustrious career. I have a long list of your previous positions. Former Czech ambassador to the United States, correct?
Yes.
Former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Minister for European Affairs, Minister for Defence, and now in the European Parliament and a member of the ECR group, which is centre-right group, European Conservatives and Reformists. I would like to ask a personal question to start us off, please, and that is about your political career. Why did you become a politician?
It's a long story. I'm now 63, so I'm already an old man, but I jumped into the public life when I was really young. I was a member of the anti-communist underground movement in my country. It was then Czechoslovakia, but I'm the Czech. And so 1989, I was among those who were organizing this big demonstration against the regime. I was jailed also. I was released just 1 week before the Velvet Revolution, and together with Václav Havel and a couple of other friends, I have established this civic forum,
Right.
which later on has won the first free elections after 40 years of totalitarian regime. And when Havel was elected as the president, that was the first free elections, I was his close collaborator, so I said to him, Václav, congratulations, I'm very glad that you were elected. I'm leaving because I was active in the underground press. It's called samizdat because we have these secret printing machines in the cellars. So I had just idea, to do it now openly without the censorship. And Havel has said, no, Sasha, it's Alexander is Sasha, You have to follow me. I'm not going there to the Prague castle alone. So I simply could not decline this kind of offer. It was a very interesting time, because everybody wanted to meet Havel, everybody wanted to come to our country. It was something like a miracle. And because I have learned some English, I studied geography, so I had the mind, where the countries are located and what is there. So I specialized on the foreign affairs, so I became his foreign policy advisor. And then later on, I was among those, I was negotiating the Czech-German peace treaty. I was knocking on the NATO doors in the United States. I contributed to the application to the European Union when we wrote the accession, when we wrote the first letter. So that's how my, let's say, public career has started. So, and then, of course, as you said, I did many things. Now I'm just an MEP.
Since when? When did you first come to Brussels as an MEP?
As an MEP, I was elected in 2019. It's just 5 years ago because, look, I did not have any big plans. So, I have already planted my trees. I have built my house. I produced 3 kids. I have now 3 grandchildren and others are coming. So, I brought my country into NATO. I brought my country into the EU. I established the Visegrad group in Central Europe. So, look, I have nothing more to achieve.
Nothing to prove.
For 5 years ago, because I was just lecturing at the university before, I had some private consulting, but I decided to support my party, as you said, is ODS, which is the part of the ECR here, the Czech Conservative Party, and one of the leading architects of the reforms in our country in the last 30 years. So I just decided to support my party, and I put my name at the bottom of the list. But in our system, the voters can make a preferences, so they evaluated me to the top. So
once again, you
I
had
did not
no
expect
choice.
that,
Right.
but because the voters believed that I could do something good here, so I was jumped by them into the European Parliament. That's the story.
Okay. Okay. And I know one of the things, let's get on to what you're particularly interested in. Here we are in mid-February now, and I know that you've been vocal on the Ukraine war. You have this anti-Soviet background as well. Is that the reason why you've been so vocal in your support of Ukraine?
It's nothing special that Vondra is outspoken here. The Czech government, my government, was very active since the first day of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So Prime Minister Fiala, who is chairman of our party, he, together with the Polish Prime Minister and Slovenian Prime Minister, were the first who just took the courage to come to Kiev in the middle of the bombing to express, not just to express the support to the Ukrainian leadership, including President Zelensky, but also to discuss, what we can do to help them, including the arms deliveries. So Czechs, Poles, Baltic states, certainly due to their historical experiences, due to their geographical location, were the first to push the West to stay behind Ukraine. So, you remember originally Joe Biden, he was offering the train to Zelensky to leave the country. The Germans, the French were very careful, It has changed, and I would say also due to our contribution, because we were the first who had not any doubt that this is just a Russian aggressive imperial war, and that Russia must be stopped, because if we do not stop Russia now, it will continue. And, I still remember as a little child, what does it mean to have the Russian tanks as the occupation army in front of your house? We did it. We had it in 1968, and certainly, this invasion and incorporation of Czechoslovakia into the Soviet camp has contributed to overall devastation of our country, because my country, before the World War II, was one of the leading economic powerhouses in Europe. But of course, this 40 years of communist devastation, 40 years of the Soviet oppression, has sent us really back into the past.
And you're convinced that if Russia isn't stopped, countries in the East and Central Europe would be next?
Sure. That's the logic of the Russian imperialism. It's a long tradition, under the Tsar, under the Lenin, under Stalin, nothing new under the sun. The key problem of Russia is that it does not know its own borders, and one can maybe even understand, to live in those vast plains, you are just moving towards some mountains to find the borders, but really we have to be careful here. And don't, it's some debate among the conservatives in some European countries, because, they have a tendency to see Putin as the guardian of the conservative sword, or even the protector of the Christian values. No. Be careful. That's not about the values, the Putin's policy. That's not about the conservative attitude. It's about the imperial appetite, and if he got a chance, he will eat you immediately. So, yes, we need to stop this.
And what's your assessment of the situation today, the war, and the support?
Well,
the
it's
Ukraine is
clear
getting?
that, it's a fight between David and Goliath. Russia is much larger. Russia has the access to the raw materials, so it can sponsor its war type economy. And Ukraine needs the help. Otherwise, without that kind of a help, it would most likely lose.
Right. And is Ukraine getting enough support from Europe? You mentioned that things have changed dramatically since the beginning of the war when there was some hesitancy. Are you convinced now that...
I think it's still too slow. For example, these armed deliveries, the European countries, they promised to deliver 1 million of the ammunition to the artillery, and the deadline has already passing, and we did just 50% of what we have promised. Not speaking about the air defense, we were promising, but the deliveries are slow. There are not there yet any serious guns in that. So it depends. If you measure this by the will 2 years ago, it was almost none. So we have made a lot of progress, but it's still the glass is half empty.
And now, according to candidates such as Mr. Trump, the US support might waver. There's some uncertainty there. Can Europe provide Ukraine with enough support without the US?
Look, I think we need to keep the transatlantic bond strong because, Russia is a nuclear power. United States is a nuclear superpower. In the EU, France has something, but UK has unfortunately left. Germany, they are still anti-nuclear even in the civilian sector. So Germany is, composing the poetry, but we are living in a jungle. And so we need the United States. And I think that it's good also for the United States to keep this transatlantic pillar strong. But the fact is that Europeans must deliver more, must be able to allocate much more for defense. There are still plenty of countries, the NATO members, who are not delivering those 2% of the GDP on defense. So I can understand Trump he's a trader. He's a trader, he's not the idealist. That's not the politics of the values, that's the real business politics. But Europeans should take this somehow into account, to communicate with him, to cooperate, to allocate enough money for the defense.
To pay, basically.
To pay.
Right.
To pay to their own defense.
Right.
It's not to pay to the United States, it's to pay to
for
our
their
own
own
defense.
Right.
Because we are closer to Russia, in fact.
Right.
We are more threatened. The US have a lot of duties, not just here in the Pacific. So, yes, there must be more fair distribution of the costs. So I have no problem with that. And we need to communicate to Trump, because this is the problem that in Europe, if you say Donald Trump, so it's shit or whatever, these progressive European elites and Donald Trump on the other hand, those are two different worlds. But, this is the game, not about the ideological proximity, it's about the interest. And we have the interest as the West, not to allow Russia to become the real aggressor and to change the balance of power in the world. So we need to talk to Trump and, of course, to make some steps, not to be one day surprised that if Trump gets the better offer from Putin, of course there is this danger, but it's up to us to convince Trump that it's more better for him to work with us.
So ideally within NATO,
of course.
And if not, European army, is that a realistic possibility?
I don't like this talks about the European army, Our problem is not that we need new uniforms, we don't need more generals, we don't need more institutions. We, as the European states, we need to allocate more money for defense, our own defense. We need to modernize the armies. We need to have the more resilient societies which are able to fight. And This is important, and we can do this if we will deliver. We can do this with NATO. There's no reason why to dismantle NATO, because Trump would be happy if we get more money for the defense, if we be more resilient. So, but we are not doing this because of Trump. We should do this because of ourselves.
Understood.
And I would be careful about declaring, we are building our army. Then Donald can come. Okay, you have your army. Fine, go ahead. You don't need us anymore. And look, it's something like, to talk about the European army is like to build your house from the roof without any basement. And this house would not sustain. First storm would dismantle it.
Did you see the interview with the US journalist Tucker Carlson, who went to interview Putin?
Yeah, I did, of course.
What did you think to that?
Look, Tucker is not a fair journalist. He is an ideologue. He of course, he likes Trump. He's spinning this in his own, according to his own opinion. And certainly, he offered us some space for Putin's propaganda, and if Putin was, this long lecture of the history was full of false statements. For example, there was a statement that we should blame Poland and not Hitler for
World War II, right?
It's a nonsense. It's a lie. And unfortunately, Tucker Carlson was not able even, to jump into that. On the other hand, there were some proposals by MEPs even to sanction. That's a nonsense. That's a nonsense. In fact, I was glad, I listened to when I came back from Strasbourg, in fact, back home, and it was in the middle of the night. So I spent 2 hours before going to sleep because I was really interested what Putin is going to say. And, you need to study. You need to know your enemy. You need to know your competitor, not just, to close this by some, censorship or whatever. No. So we are a free society, and we should be glad, to have the opportunity to know about the idea, even about the propaganda of your enemy.
Did you learn anything about President Putin that you didn't know before from that interview?
I think what is interesting, that's not entirely novelty, but since COVID, I don't know whether there was some influence, but he was in the isolation. He did not have so much access to the other people as before. There was just a handful of people with whom he communicated. And since that, I read his so-called essay, on which was published just on the eve of his war against Ukraine. It was also full of the history. Going back to the Middle Age, so this is a bit new. That's what Putin did not use so much, let's say 5-10 years ago. He seems to me be more pragmatic. But this is a kind of an imperialist thinking, which is rooted, in some dreams about restoring the glory of the past.
Okay.
This is the similarity which Milosevic had. And I was, did you see this response by Mongolian former president?
Ah, yes.
It was
they came up with the map.
Because
yes.
that's good. There was some era also in the Middle Age for a pretty long time when there was a Mongolian empire and the Russia state was just a tiny place inside. So that shows you the absurdity of the Putin thinking. And it's absurd, but at the same time, if it is upheld or supported by the will, to use the military force against the others, we have to be careful.
Right. And what about nuclear war? Is that a real danger, do you think?
What?
Nuclear war, World War III, nuclear.
Look, I think it is nuclear power. United States is a nuclear power. There are some other nuclear powers. I think despite all, I'm not going to banalize this because, it's a deterrence and, deterrence must be somehow abolished even by the will to act. But on the other hand, I think those players are still some rational. That's not like, assassinist, jihadist, where I would be really careful because that's a different story.
Okay, on a bit of a tangent, but still nevertheless a similar subject, you have described, correct me if I'm wrong, the attitude of the US changing towards Europe will change, you have said, because of migration. If I'm not mistaken, you've said that obviously there's a lot more Latin influence in the US, and so it's perfectly normal that over a longer period, the attention of the US will turn elsewhere. Does the same theory apply to Europe? I mean, there are lots of people, not only in your group, but on the right of the parliament in general, who believe that the migration wave we're seeing is fundamentally changing Europe. Is that a fair concern?
Yes, in Europe it's my concern because, if you have such a big amount of uncontrolled and illegal immigration, and if you see then the impact in some Western European countries where it's really a security factor, and that could be really challenge because, look, European states are democratic and freedom is a precondition of everything for our civilization. So we must keep the freedom of the people, freedom of movement, of everything, flow of the people, flow of the capital, flow of the goods, flow of the informations. This is in fact the key reason why I still believe it makes a sense to be in the European Union. And for Czechs, we are in the middle of Europe, so we produce much more than we consume, so we need the open markets and all that. So Schengen is important. We are not in the islands aside. The British position is a bit different in that. We are not a Switzerland where, every bastard would be able to put his money into the bank and then, the others are going for ski, so they are leaving the money there. No, we are a standard normal country which need the open borders to make our people happy and to make our economy booming. So the freedom is elementary, and if the people are not feel safe, then the freedom is step by step sacrificed. And for example, Germany, they made those mistakes with opening the arms for everybody in 2015. That was one of the Angela Merkel's key mistakes, I believe. So now it changed their politics and they are afraid. So they are now occasionally even shutting down the borders or restoring the control on the borders. So if I drive my car to Strasbourg, the highway, I need to stop there now. So, Schengen has now
more or less collapsed. I mean,
not entirely collapsed, but there are the warning signal that it could collapse. So, we need to produce more kids. I produce 3, so one is the gift to the society. But if you now see this, cult of, even not having the children, that, so even in Britain, I can see some stupid voices that if I don't have a children, I am contributing to saving the planet.
Right.
No, they are killing the planet. Of course, there are those who cannot have children, then the others must produce more to compensate it. But just to outsource the reproduction, and to outsource the reproduction to the part of the world which is very unstable, which is culturally very different, which is causing a security problem. Now look, it doesn't mean that I want to build a fortress Europe. Yes, I can have a great relationship with many immigrants, in our country, but there must be some control over this. You cannot just open the border for the illegal immigration. And this massive, young men who are marching to Europe instead of contributing to making their societies better. I think this is wrong both for Europe and
right. So what is the answer? I mean,
the Middle East.
You say you don't want a fortress
And,
Europe. What can be done?
Sure, the U.S. is immigrant country by its nature. To go to the back. But even, if you have this uncontrolled flow from the south, it's going to destabilize even them as the immigrant country. So there must be some control, there must be some, let's say, absorption capacity of the society. And still, we have to expect, because, you cannot stop the immigration entirely. And even they don't want to do it, but they want to control this somehow. And even if you control that, you have to expect that the society is somehow changing. I was living in the United States in the second half of the 90s. And if I'm coming now, I have a feeling it's a bit different country, I remember 30 years ago, those trends have been led by, it was still, the country composed of those elites, who were going to build the city on a hill, this Protestant elite, it's business like attitude, but visiting the church too every Sunday. Now, yes, they are mostly Latinos who are coming in. They are Catholic. I'm Catholic too, so I'm fine with that. But it's a little bit different mentality than this Protestant.
Right.
This Protestant
Sure.
concession is public.
Okay, things change.
The Catholic is closed. So, what I see in the United States, the quality of food is growing, the quality of coffee, quality of these things which I love. Look, I love the good food. But, with those attitudes, maybe would not be such a strong attitude to save the world in every major war. So, yes, it's changing, but it's a gradual process. And
right, and here in Europe, surely Europe is struggling. You say control migration.
Look, I think here is still the difference, because the United States, despite all their problem, I think that they are able somehow to constantly revitalize themselves. Now, of course, it's a fight of two very old gentlemen, so it looks a bit tricky. But I have a confidence that the U.S. society is able to energize itself. In Europe, sometimes I have a feeling that, we are trying to build something like a paradise on the world, in a belief that everybody would behave in the same manner. And it's a naive. It's this, for example, this green policy, which is, leading the world, leading by example. This kind of a global world based on some universal values now is under the attack of more real politics. Because, for example, in the area of human rights, I was a human rights fighter in my country, but it was about the key elementary human rights like freedom of gathering, freedom of speech, freedom of enterprise, freedom. But now this concept of the human rights of the 5th, 6th, 7th generation claims more than the freedoms, claims that every single person has to be happy with its specific requirements. That's a road to hell, because, you cannot promise paradise for everybody. That was communism, was promising the paradise for everybody, and it resulted in a hell for all of us.
But are you comparing the European Union with the communist project now?
No. That's not
What do you
true.
mean by,
But
what do you mean exactly?
I am a bit. I'm critical about this naive approach that we are trying to build a paradise for everybody. It does not work in every society. You know, in the society you have those who are winning, those who are losing. It's our interest that the number of those who are winning is much, much greater than those who are losing. But you cannot guarantee win to everybody. That's impossible. And Europe is trying to do it, you know, to build some kind of a Yellowstone national park in the European Union. That everybody would be in peace with everybody. A human lives with a human being with the wolves. You know, this Isaiah's prophecy that, you know, to build a world in which, you know, the lion and the sheep would live in love. And you know this old joke about Henry Kissinger?
No.
Henry Kissinger, with the end of his career, is retired, but got his job offer. There is a New York zoo garden, which is fighting the crisis because nobody is interested anymore to visit the zoo.
Right.
So finally they approach Henry Kissinger whether he can help them, you know, to bring the people back to zoo. He came as a new director, and after 1 week, the crowds are now storming, you know, the zoo, and the media are telling, you know, stories, headlines that the old human miracle has occurred in New York Zoo Garden, that lion and a sheep are living in a peace there. And they are bombing Kissinger, you know, whether he can explain how he has achieved this kind of a old...
How did he do it?
And he's in the hideout, but after sometimes he agreed to show up at the press conference, and he got the question, you know, how he has achieved this kind of a miracle. And he said, look, it's simple, every day new sheep.
Interesting. So, and certain naivety then on the part of EU leaders,
Yes.
and you would class the Green Deal and related legislation in that box.
Absolutely. You know, yes, I agree that we should do our best to transform our economy and thus to contribute to decarbonization as a way, you know, how to put under control the global warming. But we are doing this just without measuring, you know, the consequences of the relationship with the others. So we are doing this in a very enthusiastic way, you know, very regulatory way, you know. It's like a prison now, you know. If I'm talking to the business people, please stop now. It's too much. It's too much. We cannot do it. And what is then the effect? So we created a regulatory network with a lot of subsidies, dotation, and other, you know, socialist measures. And then China came. They does not have such strict measures. United States does not have such strict measures. And they came and are selling the good to us. Electromobility.
Oh, I see.
It's a Chinese invasion.
Right, Chinese cars.
So, you know, with this ban on the combustion engine, for example, which, you know, I have nothing against the electromobility, but let's make an open competition about various solutions. Open competition means that, you know, you have the instrument how to push the price down. If you build a monopoly, you are killing any competitiveness at home and vis-a-vis abroad. So, look, We are losing this fight with China. We are even losing this with the United States because they have much better, they do this with the tax incentives.
Right.
It's much better.
The Inflation Reduction Act or whatever it's
It's
called.
much better
Right.
to make an incentive than
Right.
to apply the bans and
Right.
to pay the fees. If you are crossing some bans. Look, Europe is not doing this in a right way.
Do you have sympathy with the farmers who are protesting here the other week? And I think they're protesting in Prague, aren't they, at the moment?
Look, sympathy. I don't have a sympathy if they are destroying the stadiums. I don't have a sympathy if they are putting the tires on the fire, and sometimes they are really tough. But sure, it's the consequence of. For example, there is another proposal. How to decarbonize the economy into 2040. There was this constant planning. It reminds me of socialism of the old times. 2040 we should limit this by 90%. It's 2030. It should be limited by 55%. In 2050, in fact, 100 because it's a neutrality goal, and then 2040, 90. It's a nonsense. It's not even a linear increase. It should be 80 or even less. And then if you are reading this proposal, which is upheld by so-called scientific board, so there are the statements they want now, they were targeting the energy now they want to target agriculture, but not just agriculture. They want to target our lifestyle. I am quoting, lifestyle. They want to change the human lifestyle. They want to change the human nature. They want us to become a vegetarian. That's stupid. The human being needs some meat. Again, tiger versus sheep. So they want to make...
It's against our nature. That's what you're saying.
Against the nature. It's against the healthy development of the human beings. So, there are the proposals to eliminate, for example, number of cattle, pigs, and other animals, and simply to make us more vegetarian. They want to make us as a sheep, but then in confrontation with the Asian tigers.
Okay.
We are gonna to lose everything.
Okay.
Look, I remember 30 years ago, I came to China first, for the first time in my life. In the main street of Beijing, I saw the constant stream of the bicycles, no cars. Now, if you come to Beijing or Shanghai, it's a constant stream of the cars. You cannot cross even the street. And what we are doing, we are going
backwards, you're saying.
to China, to have Amsterdam just constant stream of the bicycles. So this is the way, how we want to win the competition.
We're going backwards, you're saying.
So changing the human lifestyle, and of course then the farmers. They are threatened because they feel they are threatened because, they make all those products which they want to ban.
Okay.
So here I have some understanding that they are protesting. And look, what is interesting that when the energy or automotive industry was at stake, it's easy to corrupt the big companies because you promise them some regulations, some money additional, and thus, the managers, they have a prospect of next 5 years in a fine numbers. So they are not protesting. And the people, if you go to buy the your new car, it's one in 10 years or whatever. So it's always, the reaction is postponed. But here, you have 1 million of farmers. They are fighting for their life and their business now. And it's not easy, to manipulate them like a big couple of corporations.
My final question for you, Mr. Vondra. We've gone over 30 minutes, and it's regarding the European elections. I mean, these frustrations that you have listed here, will it translate into a swing in the European Parliament? And if so, which way will that swing go?
I don't expect a revolution because, it's the European elections in all member states. The situations are different from one state to another. But what I do expect is a shift from the left to the right. And I expect that the Greens and the Socialists, who are very green here, that they would get much less than now. And I would expect Conservatives would have a serious gain. So we have Giorgia Meloni in Italy. I guess that they will deliver a lot of votes. You see the development in the other countries. You saw what's happened in Dutch elections, in Sweden and elsewhere. Yeah. So I think that there would be the shift to the right.
And what about your group, the ECR group? Talk about Fidesz, the Hungarians joining the group. What do you think of that?
Look, here we have a problem. I have nothing against Fidesz. I was even defending Orban when he was targeted because, he was a conservative and, they are not measuring to conservatives on some social legislation by the same way as to the progressives. So here I was defending him. But now, with his policy towards Ukraine and Russia, no. He has selected the wrong battleground. Clearly, I told them that, until you change this policy, you cannot expect to welcome you in our family. Here, our national interests are at stake. In Poland, in the Czech Republic, but even Italians share the view. Yeah. So he has to change the policy first, not to play as a, tribune of Vladimir Putin, not as a one who is trying, to seriously complicate the help for Ukraine, and even now with NATO, to block the Swedish entry into NATO. Frankly, we need Sweden more than Hungary in NATO. They have a larger army. They have a more strategic position. So I think Viktor Orban is a great politician. I have no doubt that he's very skilled. I do not buy this arguments that he's undermining democracy in Hungary. That's not true. But with those issues in the foreign policy, that's a challenge. And here he has to change this. Otherwise, no way.
Otherwise, no to the ECR membership?
No way. Okay. No way.
Okay.
And I told them this very clearly.
That's great. We're almost at 45 minutes, so we have to end it before the batteries run out on these cameras. Thank you very much, Mr. Vondra, for coming to see us this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.